Hey guys, welcome back to the show. We're here on Wednesday. We got almost halfway through the week. I hope everyone's having a great evening, and hope you guys have some great plans ahead for the weekend. And that's of course if everybody survives all this global calamity. Because on tonight's show, we're going to be talking about the Democrats' doomsday addiction. A bunch of fucking chicken littles these guys are, but we're going to be getting into that. So make sure that you stick around because it's going to be a good one. See you on the other side.
Break 'em on. This is America First Radio. Patriots, get your ears on because we're blowing the speakers out.
Lefty G. It is time for the Lefty G Show. The only show to get you right. Get ready to get right with Lefty. Your voice taking you down Freedom Road. Now, here's your host, Lefty G.
Let's hit the fucking road!
All right, we are ready to roll. And so here we go. I'm going to say this before I get into the main topic here, which is, the Democrat doomsday addiction. And I'm going to kind of take you walk through, kind of the things I've seen over the past 50 years with, the fucking earth, burning away or melting away or freezing away or whatever these stupid, idiotic, hoaxes are when we talk about climate change. But let me just get this out of the way because we've been talking a lot about politics and things like that. And even though this tonight's topic does kind of fall into that a little bit, I kind of wanted to share that, I'm comfortable enough to say right now that I think Trump is going to win the election. That's really just less than 1 month away. I really believe that Trump is almost certain to win, as a matter of fact. And when I look at the polling, when I look at the energy level of Americans and America itself that is for him and against her, the difference between Donald and Camel Toe is basically Trump versus nobody, if you want to know the truth. So I think Kamala is simply a placeholder for the Dems because she isn't really a candidate, whereas Trump is really at the forefront of everything. And so Donald Trump at this point is about 90% chance of winning. I would put him up there. I'm not worried about it unless of course they the Secret Service falls asleep at the wheel again. Another fucking bullet comes flying by a little closer to his head than his ear. I hope that doesn't happen. But you never know. I mean, these Dems will stop at nothing. But speaking of being a corrupt bunch of pukes, and also in lieu of the hurricane that has happened in North Carolina and the Hurricane Milton in Florida, I kind of want to address kind of really 50 years of climate change hoaxes, see, these are some topics and some things that I've been having some discussions with some people with recently, and I think a lot of it has to do with a lot of things that are happening in North Carolina and about to happen or happening in Florida, and God bless all of you people in both of those states. But let's take a look at this. And I'm going to talk to you guys from about 50 years of experience of being really kind of both as a kid growing up in the world and now as an engineer, having to deal with a lot of the hoaxes. I'm going to talk a little bit about that and also being 50. Look, politicians, scientists, celebrities, they all assure us that the apocalypse is tomorrow. And don't get me wrong, they sound like these Jehovah's Witnesses. These Jehovah's Witnesses always come and knock on your door and they're like, hey, we just want to let you know that next Friday we're all going to be, dead. So you better come, join our Bible study that doesn't believe in, Christmas, birthdays, Halloween, and Jesus. So no, I don't think I'm going to do that. But all these celebrities and these corrupt politicians and these corrupt scientists, even more corrupt scientists, will assure us that the apocalypse is tomorrow. And if not, the day after is going to do just fine. They just keep pushing the date. And what I want to do here tonight is really kind of buckle you guys up because tonight is going to be quite a beefy show. I'm going to do a lot of talking here, so bear with me. Get some caffeinated coffee or favorite beverage, sarsaparilla, whatever it is, and pay attention to old Uncle Lefty here because we're going to get into this. And we're really going to be looking at the last 50 years of this, these cataclysmic predictions and all this other kind of bullshit. And I think it's going to help us kind of wind around a topic that I'm really going to be talking about over the next few shows. And that's what I like to call this first phase here, this manipulated climate change, all these Democrats with their doomsday, predictions, and possibly manipulated climate. We're going to get into that one later. But, in March of last year, of 2023, the United Nations warned of humanity's ticking time bomb. And they released a report of all reports, basically insinuating that and drawing out, insinuating that the death is near, but really putting out a multi-trillion-dollar plan to implement climate policies across the globe. Again, our tax dollars. How the fuck is a tax dollar going to keep the polar bears humping and the ice caps from melting? I don't know. Maybe we're supposed to, stuff the money into a iceberg. I don't know. I don't get it. But that's a whole nother story. The UN secretary, this guy, Antonio Gutierrez, I believe his name was, he proclaimed in the report from 2023 that he delivered a survival guide for humanity and called for the phase out of fossil fuels. And again, this is really just in one industry lobbying and fighting against another industry. I should say the battery companies, which don't get me started on cobalt and all the damage that'll do to the earth, and the slave trade in North Africa, harvesting cobalt for fucking batteries, versus the fossil fuel people that are fracking in some South Dakota or North Dakota place somewhere. Who gives a frack? At any rate, this guy Gutierrez remarks are particularly ironic because, considering that only a month earlier than that, back in March of 23, a month earlier, the Global Energy Monitor report revealed that China's expansion of coal capacity, they went to unprecedented levels, 6 times larger than the rest of the world combined. So the dinks harvested more coal, 6 times to that, than the whole world combined. Yeah, rules for thee, not for me. Whatever. I guess they get special pass. So let's really kind of digest and take a look at what we've been experiencing in the last, say, 50 plus years. In the 1960s, we were all warned of overpopulation and famine forecasts that were all the rage at that time. Despite the Green Revolution, which, spurred crop yields across the globe. This guy, Paul Eldritch, I believe his name was, who was a Stanford biologist, an end times prophet. He preached that starvation was imminent. And this was almost, he called it his starvation gospel. And he said the Green Revolution is going to turn brown. That's what he said. And then again, in the later part of the 60s, in 1968, the population was right around 3.5 billion. We're right about 7.9 billion as of 2024. And this guy, Ehrlich, amplified the insistence on a dying planet and ramped up his warnings. In 1970, as a matter of fact, there were phrases that were being thrown out like, civilization will end within 15 to 30 years unless immediate action is taken against problems facing mankind. Or there was this other lunatic, this guy, Dennis Hayes or something like that. You guys can look all this up. I did my own research trying to get ready for the show. Who was a key organizer. This guy was the key organizer of Earth Day, that bullshit thing where, they take all of our public school kids out for a day to, plant fucking trees so that the lesbian teachers can go in the back and smoke pot. But he was the key organizer of Earth Day. And in 1970, he said, it's already too late to avoid mass starvation. Look at all the fat people that are walking around today. We even have television shows, My 1,000-Pound Life or whatever it's called. Yeah, sure. Nobody's fucking starving. Also, again, in 1970, the Boston Globe ran with a chilling headline that said, scientists predict a new ice age by the 21st century. Okay, great, good. Yeah, the only ice age that I've had is, those really big ice blocks that they put in my old fashions when I order them at the bar. Newsweek weighed in April of 1975 that warned that global cooling could significantly impact agriculture, where they made a comment that they said that there are ominous signs that the Earth's weather patterns have begun to change dramatically, and these changes may be a portent of a drastic decline of food production. Again, all this thing in the 1960s and 70s about overpopulation and starving. That was the easy thing to do. That was the easy thing to look at. In 1982, moving a little bit, out of the 70s, the Doomsday Democrats stated an environmental catastrophe, which will witness devastation as complete and irreversible as any nuclear holocaust. That's what they said in 1982. And remember. And if you don't remember this one was great. I remember this one from first, second, and third grade. That acid rain concerns that kicked off all around the 1980s. Remember that? Acid rain. That was the big thing. Yet back then we were all sleeping in asbestos-laced pajamas, and we all turned out just fine. But yet the acid rain thing in the 1980s. But generally, all of that, everything was replaced in the late part of the decade with the flood headlines on, heat and greenhouse effect and sea levels. And I'm going to get to the sea levels on a particular experience that I had down in Panama here towards the end of my little spiel here. But I'm going to save that one because it just fucking makes sense. And it was funny when they came out with this that, they talked about, sea levels and the greenhouse effect. And this was all towards, the latter part of the 80s. But in June of 1989, the Associated Press, they came in with an article that said they were going to give everything on the planet an 11-year window with this idea that rising seas could obliterate nations. And that was supposed to be 11 years after 1989. Well, in 1990, aware that the apocalypse had kind of stalled out, the doomsdayers, had to change their game. And again, when I say doomsdayers, I'm referring to the dummy craps because they're behind all of this, i.e. Al fucking Gore. Remember that jagoff? But in February of 1993, this guy Thomas Lovejoy, who was the Assistant Secretary for Environmental and External Affairs at the Smithsonian Institute, stressed that the world had one remaining decade of opportunity to avoid calamity. I like how they use these amazing terms. He said, and I quote, "I am utterly convinced that most of the great environmental struggles will be either won or lost in the 1990s, and by the next century, it will be too late." Dun, dun, dun. Well, somebody turned around and forgot to tell Al Gore that, because in 2006, from 90 to 2000, 1990 to 2006, former Vice President Al Gore projected that unless drastic measures were implemented, the planet would hit an irreversible point of no return by 2016. Yeah, well, we still have fat people, a lot of polar ice, polar bears are still humping, penguins are still hopping around, and let me get to Panama here in a minute. But by 2016, he said it'd be all over. Well, game over. Here it is. We're still here. Head of the UN climate panel one-upped Gore in 2007, insisting that 2012 was the year of irreversibility. 2012. That was 12 years ago. As of the date of my voice hitting the waves right now. So in April of 2008, that media mogul, remember that old fucking weird bastard with the goofy, porn star pervert mustache, that, Ted Turner guy? He provided a far more detail in his evil predictions. He emphasized the consequences of climate inaction. And I like how they kind of, that was that new funky term that floated around for a while, climate inaction. I love that one. And he said, not doing anything will be catastrophic. We'll be 8 degrees hotter in 10, not 10, but 30 or 40 years, and basically none of the crops will grow. Most of the people will have died, and the rest of us will be cannibals. This is Ted Turner. This is, Turner Television. This is Ted Turner saying this. That we're going to be cannibals. Civilization, he further says, civilization will be broken down. The few people left will be living in a failed state like Somalia or Sudan, and living conditions will be intolerable. The droughts will be so bad that there will be no more corn growing. Ted Turner, weird porno stash mustache guy. Yeah, that guy. So moving on here, because again, I hope you guys are still with me. A year later, in July of 2009, then Prince Charles chimed in asserting that the planet had 96 months to avoid decimation. Again, another great fucking word, decimation. He said, irretrievable climate and ecosystem collapse and all that goes with it. Well said, my boy. Good show. I have no idea what the fuck he said. Yeah, so that's what he said in 2009. And then, of course, here's the great one. The cackling Puerto Rican donkey herself, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, in January of 2009, she put her chips in and bet the whole farm, including the smiling donkey, that in 2031 would be the potential for the end days due to climate inaction. She resurrected that fucking term. But it just keeps going on and on and on. So what I'm trying to point out here is that the 50 years of climate change hoax and bullshit, it's just about a money grab here, folks. That's all it is, about a money grab. In 2019, then presidential candidate Sleepy Joe Biden threw his support behind Ocasio-Cortez's dozen-year prediction by he mumbled over, and this is probably before he was completely retarded with dementia, but he said scientists tell us that how we act or fail to act in the next 12 years will determine the very livability of our planet. Livability. I thought the first two words were a little bit better, but that these other dummy craps use. But livability, I want to use that. Is that a word? Leave in the comment section below if that's a word. So let's summarize all this fucking madness over my 50 years of listening to climate change bullshit. 1967, they said there were dire famine by 1975. In 1969, they said everyone will disappear in a cloud of blue steam by 1989. In 1970, they said ice age by 2000. In 1970, they said America's subject to water rationing by 1974 and food rationing by 1980. In 1971, they said new ice age coming. In 1972, they said new ice age by 2070. In 1974, they said new ice age coming fast. In 1974, they said ozone depletion, a great peril of life. And then again in 1980, acid rain kills life in lakes. And then in 1988, this guy James Hansen, he forecast an increase in regional drought in 1990s. In 2008, the Arctic will be ice-free by 2018. And in 2008, Al Gore warns of ice-free Arctic by 2013. Again, both times Al Gore didn't know what the fuck he was talking about. And then 1995 to the present, climate model failure, and on and on and on and on. And we get introduced to this thing, this way to stick us up through taxation without representation called the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA. This is really the largest piece of climate legislation in U.S. history. It relies on tax credits, loans, and direct spending to help the United States meet its Paris Agreement commitment to decarbonization. And let me give you guys a quick 5,000-foot view of just one area of decarbonization. You see, we have these things called electric cars, and electric cars need these little, electric vehicle charging stations, which are like gas pumps, but instead of fuel, they put little sparks into the car, just for you stupid people that don't know what I'm talking about. Well, these EV charging stations require, distribution electricity on the big poles that come in and step down through transformers, and these big poles with these big lines. When you're driving to the grocery store and you look around and you see these big poles with big power lines on them, these power lines distribution-wise go back to these transmission lines. Your transmission lines carry these even larger cables out to these things called generation stations. Generation stations, they create electricity through kinetic turbinization, and you know what they do that with? Coal. They fucking do it with coal. They literally produce our electricity with coal, nuclear. Yeah, that's how it's done. It's not those big windmills in Centralia or Southern Indiana, Illinois or Southern Indiana. No, those things are about as useless as screen doors on a submarine. So no, the whole thing is a big tax scam. And again, maybe we just got to take our dollars and shove them in a walrus's ass, or in an icicle somewhere. I don't know. But that's the Inflation Reduction Act. That's really what it is. And taxpayers are paying billions for projects that corporations claim will fight climate change. But it's all complete bullshit. Human-induced global warming is supported by scientists afraid of losing grant funding. End of fucking story. Man-induced climate change is a hoax. And yes, temperatures, as measured by, satellites and all that stuff, weather balloons and thermometers and all that kind of stuff, have generally been increasing. The temperatures have been increasing a lot over the last 150 years. But you know what's funny? A lot over the past 150 years. Isn't that ironic that was right about the time we came out of the Little Ice Age? Yep, temperatures are going to increase because temperatures down here where there's ice are like generally 0 or less, and then it gets warmer. Yeah, that happens. 150 years ago, we literally just came out of the what they known as the Little Ice Age. So it's a fucking hoax here, folks. And yes, here's the thing. Carbon dioxide concentration has been increasing in recent years, but our current geological period, which they call the Quaternary, I believe it's called, is the lowest average of CO2 levels in the history of the Earth. So right now, we have the lowest CO2, carbon for most of you people. You've heard carbon footprint, the lowest in the history of the Earth. So there you have it. And, we've all been told that climate change is entirely the result of, humans, introducing large amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and natural forces have little to do with it. We've also been told that that is all fact, is settled science. It's agreed upon by 97% of scientists, that the majority of scientists have reached this consensus. Consensus. Keep in mind, you can't have the word consensus without the word con. CONSENSUS or con. CON. You pick it out. You do the math. And this alone should make everyone pause, regardless of your political affiliation. Again here, folks, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I'm a constitutionalist. But I walk around with my eyes wide the fuck open. There's no such thing as conscious science, okay? I'm an engineer. Maybe that makes me a scientist light, but I'm an engineer in my day job. So there's no such thing as conscientious light. If it's conscientious, it isn't science. If it's science, it isn't conscientious, period. Get that through your thick fucking heads. Conscientious is the business of politics, to keep the populace alarmed and have them willing to pay higher taxes to be led to safety. You bunch of fucking sheeple. Get it through your head. How does tax money going into the sky going to keep the ozone layer from decreasing? Are we somehow gluing dollar bills to the stratosphere, the toposphere? You tell me. And all of this, oh my, the sky is falling, I must go run and, tell the government about it, and the government can help as long as we pay them. It's all bullshit. And here's where I have to admit, Al Gore, in irritating, contemptible jerk, is still kind of smart, irritating, contemptible jerk. He really is, but he's got a little bit of brainstorm. Al Gore did what all the politicians strive to do. He came up with some kind of a tax in which the people not only support it, but they actually want the tax to be higher because it's the right thing to do. You've heard all these, corduroy, wearing fucking Libby Lou-Who's, these blue hairs talk about all this. And look at the support. We're paying through the fucking nose for bullshit, for nothing. Again, human-induced global warming is supported by scientists afraid of losing grant funding. End of story. The ever-changing global warming, climate change, apocalyptic dates should also be a big red flag. I just outlined a shit ton of them for all you guys. That should be a big red flag all in itself. The final goal for politicians is still the same. We humans are destroying the planet. Only thousands of regulations, treaties, and laws and taxes, tax dollars will fix it. End of story. Oh, and by the way, we're going to need lots of extra money we haven't told you about later, since you guys are so willing to pump up those taxes at the behest of your own comfort and security, and no problem. It seems every person I've met that believes we're destroying the planet with all of this carbon dioxide is willfully ignorant to so many important facts. And I'm, besides what I've already laid out here for you, I'm going to take it one step further and give you another dose, another shot in the arm. So here are some facts that the headline humpers didn't seem to get their facts straight on. They didn't read quite enough of and did their enough research. They're all just headline humpers. Our current weather is neither unusual or unprecedented, period. Sea level increases began over 15,000 years ago. Cold kills far more people than heat every single year. There is no historic correlation at all between CO2 and the oceanic pH levels, and the oceans have never become acidic, even at 15 times the modern CO2 levels. So let me go back now and tell you my little story. You know, as an engineer, I do a lot of traveling. I'm going to tell you a little story about the Panama Canal. Y también yo puedo hablar español, mi escuela militar y militar también. I can speak Spanish, so I go to South America sometimes for my job. But let's go back to the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal museum there. I asked one of the workers who, we had some time in between a project, and I asked one of the workers there who was kind of giving us kind of this little tour around and kind of showing us things. I asked if the rising sea levels threatened the canal. You know, it's built at sea level. You know, it is, after all, it's built at sea level. And she looked at me and shook her head no. I asked her to account for a pair of pictures showing the ocean at two different levels. The pictures were there, and you know, the one picture was here, and it showed the construction of the canal, and then over here, it was just, you could just see where the fascia and the levels were different. And she looked at me and she said, tides. And I thought, well, why didn't I think of that? And think about it. The entrance and exit of the Panama Canal sit at sea level and are irreplaceable to modern commerce. If they were threatened, we would never hear the end of it. We would see pictures of them year after year showing us how close we are to disaster. Hollywood would make movies about it. Everyone would be convinced that all this bullshit is real and an immediate threat that we need to be taken care of. And we would be paying even triple the amount of taxes we already are. Nope. Let me put it to you this way, folks. The canal is an immobile edifice showing no change that cannot be accounted for in the tides. A bit of a bummer, really. I guess we need something new to scare us. And, which a Kamala Harris president does scare the fuck out of me, by the way. But I guess we need something new beyond her. And you know, let's look at our planet Mars and look at the thermal instruments on Mars that report a climbing trend in temperatures. We have data as far back as Viking 1 in 1976. Shouldn't we be hearing about them? You know, these thermal instruments we put on Mars are not reporting anything as far as climbing temperatures on Mars. They're not happening. But shouldn't we be hearing about them if they're going up? You know, I think if you guys read anything by Sherlock Holmes, he would be the one that would say that these are the dogs who didn't bark, right? So do we need to manufacture crisis in order to see ourselves as heroes? Well, the Democrats want to do that. I've said it before on the show. They want to see everything as chaos. Are we smart enough to see through snake oil salesmen? No. Look at COVID. I think we failed. I think we failed at that with COVID. The common influenza, the common fucking cold kept us all inside putting masks on and calling the cops on our neighbors. Do we have the scientific skepticism and courage to say that this emperor here is no clothes? I don't think so. I think we really need to make sure that people understand. And again, go back to my example about electric cars. They're run on fucking coal. Apparently, you know, we're in trouble. I mean, we're sheeple. The masses are asses. And it's up to all of us to get out there and talk exactly the way I'm talking to you. And backboarding it, I'm sorry, off of a tragedy like two massive hurricanes is probably not a bad thing to do. You know, and look, I realize that myself, you know, I'm on the losing side of this argument because I'm using facts. And as it's said many times, you know, facts don't give a shit about your feelings. But I'm on the losing side of this argument, and I'm sure some of you listening to me tonight are as well. But just because a theory is popular and trendy doesn't mean it's right. And that's what these this global warming thing is. It's just a theory. And just because the cool kids, all the latte sippers and the people sitting in Starbucks writing the great next novel, getting their hair dyed from green to red to pink every other day, and the people with pussy hats on and skinny jeans, and because all the cool kids are the believers, doesn't make me any less of a skeptic, and you really should too. Stop walking around this world, folks, with your eyes wide shut. Don't do it. Don't do it at all, because it's as Americans especially, we have to do it, because no one else is going to do it for us. That's everything, guys. Happy Wednesday. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button to continue being part of the Lefty G experience. And I will see you guys again tomorrow. And I love you all very much. Peace through strength. See you later.